Yo, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome. Hopefully you guys are doing well. KOF 15 has just dropped. It is out. It is time, you guys. Brand new installment of KOF. And I'm here to talk to you guys about one of the major starting points of the KOF series, and it is team building and team composition. We're going to take a look at the various team compositions that you can build so that you can get started on your way to building a team that caters to your playstyle, get you up and moving, play some KOF 15. Before we can build a team, right? Let's take a look at the foundation of what teams tend to have and follow in the KOF series. So for slot 1, we have the point character, or better known as the battery. The battery character tends to be a great point character that doesn't really need to use meter. They can also hold on to meter for the next incoming character, and or they do have the option to spend whatever meter necessary to get rid of the enemy's point character as well. Slot 2, the mid. The semi-meter dumper also can be considered a battery as well. They do great damage with meter that's left over from the point character. They tend to have meter more often than not to utilize not only for damage but for defensive mechanics if need be. So if they need to counter roll or guard cancel, they do have that option as well. Now, the third slot is your anchor. This is the last person. This is the one you bet all the chips on. This character slot tends to have a character that tends to be very meter extensive and or do very well with meter. And they essentially do exactly what the mid character does, except for they tend to deal way more damage due to the increased maximal gauge on raw activation. In addition to that, they tend to have one-touch kill combos. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. More often than not, an anchor character tends to have a lot of resources at the ready to just nuke an entire character if need be. So that's why the anchor characters are pretty much important. They definitely are great for making the comebacks, especially with the longer maximal gauge that they tend to get. This here is one of the most commonly discussed team structures in all of KOF, as it lays the groundwork. And quite frankly, it's a good way to go about starting out, if I'm to be quite honest. However, team composition is a lot more dynamic and way more flexible than this structure here alone. This composition is very standard, and while it does work, this is not the end-all be-all, especially at higher levels of play. Now let's look at the main one everyone will do regardless of that. This is the main team you're going to pick up regardless of everything I mentioned here about the generic team structure, right? That team is called My Favorite Characters. Naturally, this team will work and will probably be the most motivating team to learn because, quite frankly, it's comprised of your favorite characters, right? But the question remains, does this kind of team work? Well, the answer to that, honestly, is yes. This team is honestly going to boil down to how you personally feel about your characters and the order in which you rely on those characters in matchups versus all your opponents. So with that being said, as long as it's your favorite characters, more often than not, people tend to be more motivated to play, their characters. So have fun. Now the next team we're going to take a look at is the Rushdown Team. This team tends to be comprised of, you guessed it, of course, right? Characters that bring the heat on the enemy team. Rushdown teams have characters that have great pressure strings to maintain pressure and force the opponent to make mistakes. In addition, these teams tend to spend meter to be very explosive in both damage and pressure departments. So in other words, when you hit your opponent, these Rushdown teams tend to do lots of big damage. In addition, these EX moves that they have at their avail are very strong. They give them plus frames, or they just allows them to keep adding on to the pressure. So they can be very, very strong in this department. Now, here are some example characters that fall under this category. Now that we've talked about the Rushdown teams, we're going to take a look at the exact opposite of that style of team, and it's called the Zoner Team. This team is comprised of characters with powerful fireballs that force the opponent to make poor movement and neutral choices, such as poor jumping or poor rolling. Essentially, this team focuses on keeping the enemies at bay and control the screen from afar. Also, this team tends to lean on more meter, since in most cases, These teams use meter for defensive options or metered punishment. So for example, Athena's Fireball Super is a very fast projectile super, and it does pretty good damage for a long range punish. So in essence, you will most likely be punishing from afar with a good chunk of these zoner characters. Now here are some example characters that also fall under this category. Now there's also a type of team that is comprised of characters that are similar to zoners, but control the space differently than just with fireballs. They have fantastic normals for neutral play and great specials to help them control a specific space on the screen, thus creating more of a mid-range pressure game. Space control teams do well in converting damage from poking and punishing neutral mistakes as well. The next type of team comp we're going to talk about here is a balanced team comp. This is essentially comprised of one character from each archetype in KOF. So for example, one zoner, one rushdown, one space control. A team like this is very reliant on team order, and this is due to two things: matchups and the player comfortability. This kind of team will require a lot of experimentation and knowledge of the game. Here are a few example teams that you can take a look at that are considered balanced. And lastly, we have my personal favorite type of team, and it is the flex order team. This type of team is exactly how it sounds. A flexible team comprised of characters that can be shifted in any order to deal with matchups and can use meter effectively regardless of the position on the team. Now, it is my personal opinion that a flex order team is a very strong team type, and it honestly will be something you will eventually get to as you journey into KOF on a deeper level. The reason being for this kind of leans back into my favorite characters team, in the sense that you end up liking these characters a lot and you end up being very good with them, and at some point you will evolve into a point where you will be able to flex order your team. And there you have it, you guys. There are a plethora of team compositions you can expect to be building in KOF 15. Be sure to experiment with each type of team to figure out what works best for your playstyle. Be sure to let me know in the comments below how you guys feel about these team comps. Also, if there's anything you wish for me to cover on this topic any further, or something you think I might have missed, feel free to also let me know in the comments as well. Take care, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.